Imagine descending into a place where time has frozen, a place buried deep beneath the ruins of Berlin, sealed away from sunlight, sealed away from hope. Concrete walls dripping with moisture, narrow corridors echoing with silence, and the suffocating air of defeat pressing in on every corner. This is not just any bunker. This is the final cage of Adolf Hitler, the infamous Führerbunker. Today, we dive into the darkest room of World War II and uncover what was truly inside Hitler's last refuge, the place where the Third Reich took its final, dying breath. By April 1945, Berlin was collapsing. Soviet artillery shook the ground day and night. The once mighty Nazi empire was nothing but scattered rubble. And beneath the Reich Chancellery, 8 meters underground, Hitler spent his final days inside a reinforced labyrinth of concrete. The bunker was divided into upper and lower sections, the Führerbunker above and the deeper, more secure Führerbunker below. But unlike the grand halls Hitler once ruled from, this underground haven felt more like a tomb. The walls were nearly 3 meters thick, designed to withstand bombs, but not the inevitable downfall approaching from every direction. Step inside, and the first thing you encounter is the narrow, low-ceiling corridor that led into the network of rooms. Everything smelled of damp concrete, stale air, and desperation. The lights were dim, powered by struggling generators. The sound of ventilation fans constantly hummed in the background, fighting against smoke, dust, and the suffocating atmosphere of fear. One of the first rooms hidden inside this bunker was Hitler's private bedroom. Surprisingly small, painfully simple, nothing like the luxurious spaces he once occupied. A single metal bed, a wooden wardrobe, a small table cluttered with papers, and on that table, a pistol. This was the weapon he would use to end his life. The final resting place of a dictator was no grand chamber, just a cramped, cold cell that felt more like punishment than safety. Right next to it was Eva Braun's room. Eva, who had been with Hitler for years, lived a life hidden from the public eye. Her room held a small bed, a dressing table, and a few personal photographs. It was a woman's space in the middle of a collapsing world, a strange contrast to the gloom surrounding everything else. Less than 48 hours before their deaths, Hitler finally married her inside this bunker, a desperate and symbolic gesture as the empire crumbled above them. Moving deeper, you reach Hitler's personal study. This room was the heart of the bunker, the place where he dictated his final will and where he spent hours staring at massive maps pinned across the walls. Every map was marked with red lines showing the Soviet army closing in. The phones rang constantly, reports of lost divisions, destroyed cities, and soldiers surrendering. Hitler received each update not with strategy, but with denial. Here, in this dimly lit room, the Führer faced the collapse of everything he had built. His hands trembled, his health broke down, and his belief in victory faded into delusion. The bunker also had a conference room where Hitler held meetings with his remaining generals. But by late April, these were no longer strategy sessions. They were scenes of hysteria, rage, and lies. Hitler issued orders to divisions that no longer existed. Generals promised counterattacks that would never come. Every voice in that room echoed hopelessness. This was the moment the Nazi war machine died, not on the battlefield, but underground in a room full of denial. The deeper sections of the bunker held the operational spaces, the generator room constantly overheating, the air filtration system struggling to filter the dust from collapsing buildings above, the small kitchen where cooks prepared Hitler's vegetarian meals, meals he barely touched during his final days. Water shortages were constant. The air was heavy. Sleep was impossible with the constant explosions above. Living in the bunker was not survival. It was suffocation. One of the most disturbing parts of the bunker was the living area of Josef Goebbels, Hitler's propaganda minister. Goebbels moved his entire family inside these cramped rooms in the final days, his wife Magda and their 6 children. Inside the bunker walls, Magda made the unthinkable decision. She poisoned all 6 children rather than let them live in a world without National Socialism. These rooms witnessed one of the darkest tragedies of the war. The silence that followed has haunted history ever since. There was also a medical room filled with drug supplies, syringes, and chemicals. Hitler's personal doctor, Dr. Moel, had injected him with various stimulants and sedatives for years. By the end, Hitler was a physically broken man, shaking hands, exhaustion, paranoia. The medical room reveals the truth hidden behind Nazi propaganda. The Führer was deteriorating rapidly. Then came the final day, April 30th, 1945. At around 3:30 p.m., Hitler ate his last meal, barely touching it. Just minutes later, he and Eva Braun retreated into his private study. Witnesses saw them shake hands silently before closing the door. A few minutes later, a gunshot echoed through the bunker. Soldiers rushed in. Hitler was slumped on the sofa, a pistol still in his hand. Eva lay beside him, having taken cyanide. Their bodies were carried up to the courtyard, drenched in gasoline and set on fire. Hitler's final order carried out as Soviet forces closed in on the area. Today, if you visit the location of the Führerbunker, you won't find a museum or a monument. No signs, no memorials. Just an ordinary parking lot. The German government deliberately erased it from a public view to prevent it from becoming a shrine for neo-Nazis. But beneath the surface, the remains still exist, buried under layers of concrete and dirt. What was found inside were fragments of burned furniture, scorched walls, bullet marks, broken ventilation systems, medical supplies, and scattered personal items. Each object told the same story. This was not a fortress of power. It was a grave of a collapsing ideology. Hitler's last bunker shows a simple truth. No matter how powerful a dictator becomes, when built on fear, manipulation, and cruelty, the end is always the same. A dark room, a fading light, and a legacy buried in concrete.